Hello, my name is Tanika Mann of Tanika Mann and Associates, and today we're going to be talking about the Square outage that happened last week and what you can do to protect yourself if you are ever in this situation. Please note that this video does not just apply to those people who use Square, but it would apply to whatever payment processor that you use. You never know when the network is going to go out, the internet is going to go out, so you want to make sure you have a plan in place to minimize a loss of revenue. So, with the Square outage last week, Square was updating their network settings or something on their network, and unfortunately, things didn't go right and it caused the network to be down for the entire day. So, this caused a lot of disruption, and not just for people who use Square, but also people who use Cash App. The services were down for the entire day. No invoices, no sending or receiving cash apps to and from people, and no credit card transactions could be processed in real time. So what do you do if this happens? What do you do if your POS system is out? What do you do if you're in the middle of nowhere and you need to be able to collect transactions because you're running your business? Of course, you need your money, right? So one, if you are using Square specifically, Square has a function called offline mode. So with offline mode, you are still able to conduct transactions as you normally would, but the system is just storing the information. Once you are back in an area that has service, or once the network is back up, the transactions will process as they normally would. However, the software will only store the transactions for a 24-hour period. So if your service is not restored, or if the network is not back up and running within a 24-hour period, all of the data that was collected will be lost. Now, as far as I know, that's not something that typically happens. Even in this situation with Square having this outage for the majority of the day, they were able to get their systems back up and running within that 24-hour period. So all the merchants who did utilize the offline mode, they didn't lose any revenue from that regard. As far as I know, Square seems to be a trusted and a reliable way to process transactions. So the chances of you losing a lot of revenue, I would say there's like low risk associated with that. However, when you are deciding to use offline mode or anything like that, as far as like collecting customer data and depending on the system to, run it after a certain time, just make sure you do your due diligence and you can trust whatever service provider that you are using. So just to recap that, Square does have offline mode. If the system is down, or if you just happen to lose internet or service, or you're in a bad area and you still need to collect transactions, you can collect it. The software restore for you, and once you are back in an area that has service or service is restored, your transactions will go through as normal. So what else can you do? And make sure you have alternative ways to collect payments. So one, outside of electronic payments, of course, you can always collect cash. If your credit card or your main POS system is down, you can collect cash. Some people choose to do cashless payments, but you have to do what you have to do. That's one way to do it. Another way is to use another form of like electronic payments. In this situation, Cash App was down, but make sure you have a Cash App set up just in case. You can also do Venmo or Zelle. Make sure, because typically people will have, if you don't have Cash App, you probably have Zelle. If you don't have Zelle, you might have Venmo. I wouldn't recommend like having a lot or an excessive amounts of ways to collect revenue, because then that's gonna make it's gonna add more tasks to you. You're gonna have to like reconcile all those accounts. So let's just say you collect payments with Square, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle. At the end of your accounting period, like a good practice, or if you're doing bookkeeping like you should be doing, you'll have to go back and reconcile all those accounts just to make sure that the correct payments were coming through. So you don't want to make your life harder, but you do want to have alternative methods set up just to minimize losing a lot of revenue. So if you're using Square, I would say maybe like 2 additional ones. Square and Cash App are on the same network. They're owned by the same people. So maybe do Zelle and Venmo. If you're using like Stripe, then maybe do or have like a cash Cash App and Zelle set up, or a Cash App and a Venmo. And depending on the business that you have, that's also going to determine like what alternative payment methods that you accept. Because for small business owners, some small business accounts can't have a Zelle attached. Like Zelle doesn't have the option for some businesses to have accounts with them to transfer money. So it would have to go directly to a person, and you want to make sure that you're not commingling funds. So that may not be the best option depending on the type of business you have set up. But there are ways around that if you are responsible enough to do the transaction in the right way. However, talk to your accountant like that. Nonetheless, the point of this video is that make sure that you have more than one way to collect money. You don't want to you don't have to go overboard and have 10 different ways to collect money. I mean, it sounds good, but it's also going to make your life more difficult. But just make sure you have some type of backup. And then another thing that we can all learn from this as business owners is, not to say that Square didn't do any risk analysis before they decided to run this network update, but before you decide to run an update or update your systems or change softwares, or maybe change one of your major service providers, or maybe if you provide a particular service and you decide to change machines, or if you bake cakes and you want to try a new ingredient, before you make any major changes, make sure you run a risk analysis on that change to make sure that you are going to cause the least disruption as possible. So you want to make sure you're doing it on a good day. You want to check all the pros and cons. You want to make sure you have a plan prepared for anything that can go wrong that you can think of. Just like before you implement something new, make sure you think about what type of outcome is this gonna have. If everything goes right, boom, this is what's gonna happen. These are the things that could potentially go wrong. These are all the things that can go wrong, and this is what I can do to fix it. So if I'm implementing this new software, if everything goes haywire, this is what I can do in the meantime. Just make sure that you are prepared and ready to deal with whatever is to come. And one thing that I can say about Square, and no, they are not sponsoring this video, is that after the outage, I appreciate that they were transparent in what happened, and they even offered for a 24-hour period that the merchants who use them, they were able to use the instant transfer. That's a service basically where you can get your money right away. Typically they charge a fee for that, a percentage of whatever it is that you're sending, but they were allowing their the customers or the merchants who use them to transfer their money out of their Square balance to their bank account balance, without having to pay that additional fee. So I think that was a good customer service tactic for them to do, because for your main POS system to go down, that's a big thing if you run a lot of transactions. And even though the offline mode is available, some people are not gonna do that because it is very risky. Like I said, when you use offline mode, you it's only gonna hold your information for 24 hours. So depending on the type of risk you're not gonna do that. But then some people may have the mindset okay, they're gonna get it back up in time, it'll be okay. But also, like I said, I've never heard of Square having an outage for longer than 24 hours. I haven't heard of any disruptions within the system that were too bad. So these are all things you want to keep in mind. Make sure that when you are planning for your business, you are doing your due diligence and deciding what payment methods you are going to use, who is going to be your main POS, whether you have a physical location where you have a cash register, or you're collecting credit cards, or even if you're collecting payments via invoice, or if you're doing cardless transactions where you're entering credit card information. You just need to do your due diligence, check and see if they have something like an offline mode. What is their process like when the systems go down? How often do their systems go down? The hassle, if any, have people had in times of disarray. Also, a big one is you want to check and see how much their fees are, how much their fees are per transaction. So I know with Square, the last I remember, it was 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction, but I think that increased, or that is the new rate, something like that. Nonetheless, those are all the things that you want to those are some of the things you want to check when you are deciding who's going to process payments, even the alternative methods. So like when you use Cash App, what is the transfer out fee? When you use Zelle, Venmo, or whatever. I know there's more ways to transfer money. I just remember the main ones right now. But nonetheless, just check the fees that are associated with it, how long it's going to take for the money to be into your account. They have a free option. Then you also want to do your due diligence on those companies just to make sure that your account information and your customer data is being protected as much as possible. So with all that being said, I'll wrap this video up. I hope you learned something. At the very least, I hope that you are aware that Square has its offline mode. And if you haven't already, you're encouraged to have some type of alternative payment system set up just in case your main one goes down. You're still able to collect money and minimize your loss of revenue as much as possible. So thank you. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'll leave my contact information in the description bar below, and I'll see you for the next video.